Buying a car is one of the most potentially dangerous and life-changing mistakes that you can make in your life. And while this may seem like a bit of an overdramatic statement, I fully believe it. Because unlike a house where there are safeguards in place to help prevent someone from overextending themselves and getting into bonkers interest rate debt, these exact safeguards don't really exist in the car market. The sole fact that real estate predominantly appreciates, not depreciates, provides home buyers with a relative amount of safety net with that home purchase. Because the vast majority of the time, with of course some historical exceptions, whenever you purchase a house, you know that that house isn't going to go down in value by 20% tomorrow. But in the car market, that exact situation plays out every single day. And as cars have gotten more and more expensive, rivaling that of home prices from back 20 years ago, it has become more and more dangerous to make a poor car purchase. And yet the safeguards in place to get car loans really haven't changed a whole lot. There are still so many people paying double-digit interest rates on their car purchase, people with cars that cost more than what they make in a year, buy a new car only to have that car depreciate the moment that they drive off the lot that very same day. Because of this, I think that buying a car can potentially have some very serious consequences, and it's one of those purchases that are very difficult to get out of if you go about doing this the wrong way. And well, I truly believe that buying a car is a decision that you should make with the same amount of due diligence and seriousness that you take whenever you make a really large purchase like buying a house. But for so many people, buying a car is a relatively flippant decision, and that is a huge mistake. And so in this video, I want to break down some of the mistakes that you should avoid if you are purchasing a car in 2024. And if you are someone who has already made some of these mistakes, I'm also going to go over some of the different ways that you can rectify these issues, or at least attempt to rectify them. And while some of you watching this video may feel like some of these mistakes seem very common sense and relatively elementary, these are all scenarios that I get asked about all of the time, and so I know that these are questions that people consistently have, and they're issues that are consistently being addressed by people all over the country. But before we dive into that, I do want to let you guys know that my course, the Car Sharing Masterclass, is on sale from May 20th to May 27th for Memorial Day. And if you use the code MEMORIALDAY150, you can get $150 off your purchase. Over the last 7 years, my husband HP and I have built a car sharing fleet out of economical vehicles, and we have turned this business model into an incredibly successful Turo fleet. And well, we want to teach you guys how to do the same, which is why we created the Car Sharing Masterclass. The Car Sharing Masterclass is 7 hours of course content breaking down every single thing that you need to know about starting and scaling a car sharing fleet with the same business model that I use. We teach you everything that you need to know, from how to buy cars and how to determine which cars are the right ones to buy, how to find below market value deals, and how to do a pre-purchase inspection on the vehicles that you purchase. We help turn your car sharing operations into a semi-passive one using lockboxes, codes, and keyless entry. And of course, we teach you how to navigate damage claims and how you can actually profit off of damage claims whenever they do occur. We dive into co-hosting, and we have contractual templates. We go into LLCs, finances, insurance, and more. Whenever we say that this is a full A to Z course, we truly mean it. And the best part is that in addition to over 7 hours of course content, you'll also be invited to our private Discord and our private monthly Zoom calls as well. And to top all of this off, we are so incredibly confident with the quality of education that you'll receive with the Car Sharing Masterclass that we offer a robust 30-day money-back guarantee, no questions asked. That way you can give the Car Sharing Masterclass a try at no risk to you. If you guys are interested in checking out the Car Sharing Masterclass, you can use the code MEMORIALDAY150 between May 20th to May 27th to get $150 off. You can check out the link down in the description below. First is paying for cash. Now, this is a relatively common misconception across people that aren't well versed in buying cars, and that is the idea that buying in cash is actually an advantage when making that purchase at a dealership, and that really couldn't be further from the case. Whenever you go to a dealership to buy a car, you should really keep in the back of your mind that a dealership really doesn't make money off of the cars that they sell. Of course, they do, but this isn't the bulk of where their profit comes from. Instead, they make a ton of money off of the loans that they actually finance for the vehicles that you buy. And so by not paying cash for a car, that is actually a big red flag for the dealership that you're buying from. And so you never, ever want to go into a dealership and tell a salesperson right off the bat that you are buying cash, because if you do that, that's a pretty surefire way to ensure that you're never going to get the best deal possible. possible. Instead, what I would do, and what I have done in the past with cars that I have bought in cash, is I actually go through the entire purchase process as if I'm going to finance. I tell the salesperson, hey, I plan on financing this through you. I really feed into that the entire time that I'm looking at the car, and then at the last hour, I will tell the dealership that I'm actually going a different direction. I did this years ago with my Ford Transit camper van that I purchased. I actually did end up financing the camper van, but I financed it through a third-party bank, but I didn't tell the dealership that. We went through the entire dealership negotiation process with the assumption that we were financing through the dealership. And then at the end of the sales process, when we told him that we were actually going to go with a third-party bank instead, the salesperson and finance guy looked like they were going to cry. Like, seriously, the finance guy was relatively new and you could tell that he was visibly upset. But as a result of this play, we were able to get a killer deal on this van, and this deal would have never been possible had we told them that we weren't going to be financing through them. While this absolutely applies with paying cash, as I just mentioned, it also applies if you're somebody who is financing through a third party. At the end of the day, you don't need to let the dealership know at the very beginning how you plan on paying for the car, and so you want to make sure to withhold that information, or maybe just say that you don't know until the very last minute whenever you actually have to make the decision and pull the trigger with whatever route you plan on going with. The same can be said for trade-ins. Don't tell the dealership right off the bat that you're planning on trading in the vehicle, because that could potentially change the negotiation situation. Dealerships want you to finance through them. They want to be able to charge you interest, extra fees, and they want to be able to make money off of that. So if you're paying cash, this is absolutely not a good thing, and you're not going to be able to get the best deal possible. I like to practice the belief that the dealership doesn't need to know everything about your car purchase until it's time to actually pull the trigger, so don't give them any extra information that they could use against you. And never ever tell them that you plan on paying cash. Next is a mistake that can truly be a life-changing one, and that is co-signing for a car loan for someone that you either don't intend taking the car payments over for, or for a car payment that you can't afford to take over. I would scream this from the mountaintops if I could. Do not ever co-sign for someone who you aren't prepared to fully take over the car loan for. The way that I've typically seen this type of scenario play out and end up going sour is whenever somebody signs or co-signs on a car loan for their significant other. This is absolutely a disaster waiting to happen unless you're somebody who's fully prepared to take over that loan. And I truly cannot stress how absolutely of a terrible idea this is. Please never do this. Now, this isn't to say that you shouldn't ever co-sign. There are specific people that you absolutely could co-sign, and there are specific people in my life that I would co-sign for in a heartbeat, and I wouldn't hesitate to take over a loan if I needed to. But doing this with someone that you're either not extremely close with, or a significant other that you're not married to, it can absolutely end in a disaster. For example, if you were to break up with the person and then they ended up leaving you with the car loan. There is just so much risk to this, and there really isn't any upside, so there's just no reason to do it. Now, if you are someone who's already done this and you're going to try to figure out a way to get out of this terrible situation, there are some things that you can try to pursue, but the success rate is going to vary a lot depending on your specific situation and depending on the person that you co-signed for. First is to get yourself off of the loan. Really, one of the only ways to go about doing this is to get the person who has the car that you co-signed for to refinance. Now, there are some limitations to refinancing. Number one, you're assuming that the person you co-signed for has good enough credit to refinance. And number B, you're assuming that they're willing to do it, which are two assumptions that may not apply in many different scenarios. But if you can convince the person to co-sign, or if they're willing to do it, this can absolutely get you off the loan. Another far-fetched option that could potentially work, but I've actually never put this to the test, is that if you are someone who's on the front of the loan, you could potentially try to convince the secondary to just sign the car over to you, which would then give you more freedom to do what you need to do with the vehicle. I was recently met with a situation where a woman reached out to me and she had co-signed for her boyfriend's car loan. She was on the front of the loan, he was on the back of the loan, and she found out that he had been cheating on her their entire relationship, so she was trying to figure out what she can do with this vehicle loan. Now, at the time that she reached out to me, she actually had the car in her possession. The ex-boyfriend or boyfriend didn't have it, and so her plan was to just simply refuse to give it back, using the law of possession as a little bit of a basis here. Then, because she was on the front of the loan and all of the loan paperwork was pretty much all in her name, her plan was to try to persuade this guy into signing over the car to her. I actually was never able to see if this plan worked, because this person ended up getting back together with her boyfriend boyfriend and she just gave the car back to him, which is unfortunate. But I would have loved to see if this actually worked in execution. But if you are someone who is in a worst case scenario, maybe this could work. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. And the third thing that you can do, which is sort of a Hail Mary last ditch resort, is you could potentially list that car on platforms like Turo to try to make the car payments. That way you don't fall behind and it doesn't affect your credit. Years ago, my sister was dating this absolutely terrible guy and she ended up co-signing on a car loan with him, and then they ended up breaking up, and my sister was left with this car that she absolutely could not afford. So I ended up just taking it from her. I listed it on Turo and I made all the payments on the car, and I ended up closing out the loan and everything worked out fine in the end. The car did end up actually doing pretty well on Turo, and all of the profit that we made from the car was sort of icing on the cake, but the real purpose of listing that car on Turo was to just simply get the loan paid for, which was accomplished successfully. This is obviously not a great scenario, but it can work. In fact, Alvin, the 200 car Turo host that I've talked about a number of times on my channel before, he has a number of owners who worked with him who sent cars to him because they could no longer afford the car payment. Either there's a co-signing situation, someone got in over their head. There's been some scenarios where actually somebody had purchased a new car, they ended up getting deployed and they didn't want to have an expensive car payment while they were gone. There's a lot of scenarios that have played out very similar to that, where they listed their car with Alvin and it's worked out really well. So if you're interested in checking out Alvin and his team and you want to explore that option, you can check out the link down in the description below or go to the website rentoutmycars.com. The point is, getting out of a loan that you've co-signed for is extremely difficult, so don't do this. Next mistake is horrible, terrible death interest rates. A bad interest rate on a car loan will absolutely kill you. Just look at this example we have of a $25,000 car with zero down, financed for 72 months. With a 6% interest rate, which still isn't great, but it's pretty common in today's car market, you're going to be paying $4,831 in interest payments for that $25,000 car over the course of that 72-month loan. A 14% interest rate, which is actually average for this used car market, you're paying $12,090 in interest. Half of the value of the car you're paying in interest alone. But a 20% interest rate, which believe it or not, does happen, and I've spoken to owners with interest rates at this level many times, you are paying $18,000 in interest alone over the course of that 72 months. This is a scenario where somebody is going to buy a car and they will have absolutely no way out of that car other than getting the vehicle repossessed. Because the ultimate outcome here is that you're paying way too much for the car, your monthly payment is drowning you, and you're so upside down in the car that you can't even get rid of it if you want to. But if you are in this scenario, you do have a few options. If you bought the car for a decent price and you aren't underwater on the car quite yet, then absolutely sell it. Get rid of that car, buy a car in cash, ride your bike for a little bit until you can buy a car at a lower rate. I don't care what you do, but if you're able to sell the car and you have an extremely high interest rate, you should sell the car. Number 2 is refinancing. But again, this kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier. You can only refinance if you have a good enough credit score to refinance at a lower rate. If your credit score has gone down or even maintained the same rate, then refinancing won't do anything because your rate is still going to suck. Or number 3, and for many people who are upside down on their car and they can't sell it because they owe too much, you're just going to have to bite the bullet and pay that loan off as fast as you can. Let's say that you have the 14% interest loan that we mentioned earlier. Well, your payment would be $515 per month, and at the end of that loan term, you'd pay about $12,000 in interest. But if you paid an extra $250 per month on that car, you'll be able to pay that car off in 43 months, so over 2 years early, and you'll be able to save yourself $5,000 in interest. If you paid an additional $500 per month, you'll save yourself over $7,000 in interest, and you'll be able to pay your loan off in 30 months, which is over 3 years early. This is because unlike your minimum monthly payment, which goes to both principal and interest payments, resulting in your overall loan balance being drawn out longer and more of that being paid to interest, whenever you make a monthly payment in addition to your minimum monthly payment, you can actually apply that to principal only, meaning that 100% of that second payment is going to the principal, so it's paying down the loan and none of it's going to interest. This can have a huge impact on the longevity of your loan. It can make you pay off your loan so much faster, and it can save you a ton of money on interest. But if you do end up going this route, make sure that you are in fact confirming that your additional payments are going to principal only. With some banks, you actually have to go an extra step and opt in to applying it to principal only rather than principal and interest. In fact, this happened to me whenever I was making extra payments to my husband's car loan. I had to manually select principal only payments, otherwise it would also go to interest, which just feels like a scam. And last but not least, do not ever think about buying from those shady car dealerships and car sellers that are on Facebook advertising cars for an exorbitant price. As someone who buys a lot of cars on Facebook, I see these sellers all the time, and they're terrible. These sellers are advertising their cars as $2,000 down, which sounds great, but they're not only going to give you a terrible deal on your financing of the vehicle, but they're also going to take advantage of you on the vehicle price as well, charging you in some cases 50% more than they should be for the vehicle and also upcharging you on the financing, so you're really getting screwed on both ends of the deal. Small-time dealerships can be okay if you plan on paying in cash and if you know how to navigate the car market to where you can find a good deal. But where you get into a lot of trouble is these buy here, pay here types of dealerships, and it is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to find cars at these establishments that are actually worth buying and that aren't going to leave you financially in the red whenever things are said and done. I would rather see you go to a franchise dealership, pay a little bit more for a newer car, than settle for an older, higher priced car from one of these crappy dealerships. Because in the end, you'll end up more positive with that franchise dealership than going to one of these predatory ones. And whenever a franchise dealership is the lesser of two evils compared to you, you know that you're in the wrong. And that says a lot about these buy here, pay here dealerships. And again, the reason why these types of dealerships are so terrible is because you're buying the car at an extremely high price, you're financing the car at an extremely high price, so it puts you in a position where you really don't have an out if you end up needing to get rid of that car. And if you are someone who's already purchased a car through one of these dealerships, then your options that you have available to you are honestly extremely limited. Chances are you're not going to be able to sell the car because you bought it for too much and you're too underwater. You're not going to be able to refinance because the car isn't worth a ton. And so the only option is going to be to just pay off that car as fast as possible. And so there you guys have it, some of the mistakes that everybody should avoid in this car market, truthfully any car market. These are mistakes that can absolutely have long-term financial impacts to you, and you need to make sure to tread all of these issues lightly. And these are really cautionary tales as to why the car market is no joke and buying a car needs to be taken seriously. Like always, you guys, if you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.